How's it going, guys? Bobby here with another tutorial. So in this video I'll show you how I edited this picture, which kind of looks like an HDR, but it's not. I actually just took one picture I exposed for the sky, and basically I managed to recover all the details down here. So this picture was shot at Grand Teton National Park. I had to get up really early, like 4 o'clock in the morning. Go up somewhere high, and there was so many mosquitoes. I got a lot of bites, but it was worth it because the pictures turned out great. So I'll just show you how I edited this one. Let me show you the original picture, and you ready, guys? I gotta click it and then boom. So that is the original. You know, basically everything down here has like this black, you can't see anything, but with Lightroom I managed to recover all this detail. Now for these shots with a lot of contrast, it's better if you shoot HDR, like a couple images, because there's just going to be less noise in the shadow areas. But you know, if you don't have a tripod or whatever and you can't you know, do an HDR, shoot in RAW, because there's no way you can recover this much detail if you're shooting JPEG. So shoot in RAW, expose for the highlights, and get your shadows really dark, and you can recover a lot of information in Lightroom. So I'll just quickly show you how I edit it. So let me go to the original file, and before we start, let's just quickly look at my camera settings. So it was shot on a 5D Mark III, 1/6400th of a second. Is that right? 640th of a second. Sorry. F8 ISO 200, and on the 24-105 lens. So you know, that's my settings. So let's just get started. So for the color temperature, I didn't really change a lot. Actually, I didn't change it in my original one. So I just went down to highlights and shadows. So basically you want to just pull your highlights all the way down, get as much information as you can. The sun's always just going to be a bright white spot. There's no way you can get detail in it. That's just how it goes. So for the shadows, you want to pull it up, and as you can see, there's just Lightroom recovered so much information. So that's before and after. Alright, for whites, what I do, here's a little trick I do. You press down the Option or Alt key on your keyboard and drag the whites up. As you can see, the whole picture turns black, and you want to go up until you see some whites or red spots. That's basically showing you that you're clipping some areas. So you want to let go. And for the black, do the same thing, but pull the other way, and until you see some clipping areas, and you just want to drop it. So that basically gives you a pretty good contrast. Alright, so for clarity, I bumped it up just a little bit. And for vibrance, I also bumped it up a little bit. Alright, so the curves I didn't touch. For saturation, I brought up the orange to 31. So somewhere around there, 29 is fine. And for the yellows, I brought it up also, just to give it a little bit more saturation. For green, I brought it up also a little bit, just to give the mountains and grass down here a little bit more color. And for the blue, I also put it up just a little bit. Okay, for split toning, the hue I set it to 45, and the saturation I set it to 19. Alright, and I didn't touch the shadows. For detail, let's just go somewhere with a little bit more detail, and I just want to bump it up to about 65. And the radius, I don't think I touched that. Detail, 25, 30-ish. And then for masking, because adding sharpening will add a little bit of noise, so you want to zoom in. As you can, I don't think you can see it on your screen, but there is some noise in the sky. So what you want to do is you press down the Option key again, and you just want to go up, and then you want to let go until you are happy. So basically, everything that's black will not be affected by sharpening, so the sky will be pretty clean, and everything else in white will be sharpened. Okay, so for noise reduction, I just want to give it a little bit because, you know, I did some sharpening. There's some noise, like grain in the shadows area, so basically that's it. Alright, let's go down here. You want to remove chromatic aberration because I'm pretty sure there is some in the picture because you're shooting right into the light. So profile, let's just see what it's going to do. You know what? I'm just going to leave it because it's actually a little bit more bulgy when I do the corrections. So yeah. And basically that is all I'm gonna do. Maybe let's play around with the calibration. Set it to landscape. Way too saturated. I'm just gonna leave it. Sometimes it works good, sometimes it doesn't. So basically that's all the adjustments. Actually, before we do anything else, I'm just gonna crop it because that's how I did it in my original photo. So I'm just going to crop it down a little bit just to give it a little bit more of a panorama-ish type feeling. Okay, maybe I'll just add a little bit more sky. So in Lightroom, your cropping is, you know, totally like, what's the word? I'm having a brain fart, but yeah, it's undestructive, so you can just go back and just crop it again if you don't like your cropping. But basically, that is pretty much the adjustments. Now we're going to play with some local adjustments. So we're going to go to the brush, and we're just going to set the exposure to a little bit higher. So maybe, you know, 0.21, and set the contrast to 26, about 28 or whatever, close enough. And clarity to 40 something. And then we're just going to brush the mountains and make them pop just a little bit. And maybe I'll just set the contrast a little bit higher so you can really see each set of mountains, and it gets like lighter at the edges and it gets darker, so it looks really nice. So I'm just going to create a new layer, new brush. I'm going to reset it, so press the Option key, and this effect would change to reset, so click that and that's going to reset everything. So I'm just going to bring some clarity, maybe some exposure, contrast again, bring up the shadows maybe a little bit, and just brush this side and just bring it out in the details. So something like that. Okay, so everything else is pretty good except for this part, which is really dark. So I'm just gonna make a new brush. Okay, again, reset everything. For this one, I set the exposure to 8.6. Okay, contrast. Oh, okay. I messed. Oh, 0.86. Sorry about that. I read it wrong. 8.6. Okay. I set the contrast to -31. highlights to 62 and shadows to 100 and clarity to 15 and saturation to 28. And basically I'm just gonna bring the flow a little bit higher, and as you can see, it really brightens up the grass and everything. So you know, when you're doing your brush stuff, you're gonna take your time. I actually went down here and then just like brushed in all the details. So you're gonna take your time on this. I'm just gonna do a very rough job, but just gonna erase some of that. So once you zoom in, as you can see some color noise. So that's why it's better to do an actual HDR in these situations, because you're not gonna get so much noise. But you know, if you're shooting RAW and then you can't do an HDR for some reason, you know, Lightroom is still really awesome at recovering shadow details. So you want to expose for the highlights, because if you get a blown out, you know, sky, you can't recover that. So, you know, basically you get the point. Just brighten everything up down here. Alright, something like that. So again, you can just take your time, but that looks pretty good. Alright, maybe just a little bit up here. And basically, when I shut that off, it gets brighter. So if I shut off all the adjustments, as you can see, it's a lot worse. So with the okay, that looks really bad, so I'm just gonna erase it. Alright, something like that. Alright, so if you can see, there is a flare down here. I used the lens hood, but if you shoot straight into the sun, you're going to get some flare. So I'm going to create a new brush. Again, reset everything. This time I'm setting the color temperature to -37 and set the tint to -27. Okay, that's just going to give us a little bit more green tone, so we're going to brush away the redness. In the last video, I showed you how I get rid of flare in Photoshop. It's a much better solution. So if you haven't seen the last video, go check it out. But I'm doing everything in Lightroom, but you know, sometimes Photoshop is still better. But yeah, the exposure, I set it to 0.18. And the saturation to -12. So we're just gonna paint that. And basically that just kind of gets rid of the flare. So, whoops, I kind of want to erase some of that. Let's get a big brush and just kind of blend it in a little bit better. Okay. And basically, it kind of gets rid of the flare. So a final thing, okay, I'm just going to do another brush, reset everything, and this time I'm just going to bring up the temperature up a little bit, just a little bit, and bring up the exposure. And we're going to, and clarity, and just bring the flow all the way down, and we're just going to paint some sunlight down here. Okay, it's a very subtle adjustment. Maybe I'll bring it up just a tiny bit, something like that. Okay, and basically if you shut everything off and on, it just adds a little something to the picture. So basically that is that is how I edited this photo. Not very complex. Basically the main thing you want to focus on is bring the shadow all the way up, bring the highlights all the way down, and then bring some contrast and everything, and just fix the stuff you want to fix, and then you got a good picture. So that's about it. I'll see if I can do another video this week. If not, when I was school starting, so I'm probably gonna upload one video a week from now on. So yeah, that's about it. Hope you learned something in this video, and let's just go to my original photo. Is that my original? This is my original. So a little bit more saturated, but you know, a little bit more contrast. So you know, we can just go back and just add a little bit more contrast, maybe some saturation, and you get a pretty similar photo. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like my videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. But other than that, that's about it. So thanks for watching, guys.